Hi, welcome to Even the Dog Has ADHD because apples don't fall far from trees and it's never just one. I'm really pleased to welcome Aldon and Emma from Brooklyn. Welcome, guys.
Hi,
Hi.
thanks, Diana.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to be
Oh,
here.
well, I'm really pleased you're able to join again and share a bit about your story. So maybe if we begin with where you guys are now, living in Brooklyn, and maybe a bit of your couple backstory we'll start with. How about that?
Sure.
Yeah,
Do you want to take this one?
yeah, I can start out. So, where we are now, Brooklyn, we just moved to Prospect Heights, so we're really close to the park, which was super important to us
Yeah.
when because we were living in a place that didn't have a lot of green space before, and we realized we didn't really go outside when there wasn't green space, and so now we are constantly outside, which is fantastic.
Fantastic.
We love this new place. Um, Yeah, a little.
Not us. We've been
Yeah.
together for about 3.5 years now.
Mhm.
A little bit north of that. Um, yeah, we met during the pandemic
Yeah, on the internet.
on the internet. Which it's always kind of like a talk about meeting on the internet, but really like so thankful because otherwise we would have never ever crossed paths
Yeah,
without the apps
yeah.
as it is.
No mutual friends, really. One person that I know went to the same college as you, but I think you had been to a party together and he knew you existed.
We both knew each other existed, and that's
But,
about
like,
as close as it got.
Yeah.
So, met from there, moved in together about a year and a half into our relationship.
Yeah.
Never looking back.
Yeah, no,
Doing
it's
real
been
well.
going, yeah, going great. We have our own place now. Or the first time we moved in together, we had a couple roommates, and that was for my sense of safety. I was like, oh, if I'm moving into you, we need like neutral ground, also living with us, just in case
In
anything
case this
goes
breaks
south.
bad, yeah. But
I'm
it didn't.
Yeah, I'm a hyper planner. I need to make sure that there's a safety net. Not that we needed one at
Exactly.
all. Like,
But now we're just kind of having a lot of fun. We go to a lot of concerts together.
we live, yeah, I mean, in the area we live in, there's so many comedy clubs, and we can literally just be like, oh, what's going on tonight? It's $10? Okay.
So we see a lot of like local stand-up shows. Travel quite a bit. Well, we love to travel more together, but we travel as much as we can.
Yeah,
together.
We're currently planning in 3 weeks. We're going to be backpacking in the Arctic Circle in Sweden, doing the King's Trail, which I'm very excited for. We've been planning the trip for 2 years. We're also going with his best friend. Training for that.
Yeah.
Getting stuff. Yeah.
That's us.
That's what we're doing.
So when you guys first met, when you were dating, so we've talked quite a bit previously about who has a diagnosis, when did you disclose the diagnosis, who hasn't got a diagnosis. So do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think we talked about it pretty early on. I mean,
I think it was also pretty
extremely
obvious.
obvious. Yeah.
It was, some things unspoken, just like, oh, I see you. Like, I know what's going on here.
Real recognizes real. Really quickly. I even on our first date, I really kind of, without having quite the words for it, you could just kind of tell by pace of conversation, direction of conversation.
Oh my God, we didn't stop talking for like 4 hours straight and talked about everything under the sun in no real direction whatsoever. Like, he would say something and be like, oh, that's really cool. This reminds me of this innocuous subject that's completely unrelated that I have a very detailed story about.
Yeah, like it was just tangent city the entire time.
Yeah.
If you let us go, we will change the topic 1,800 times.
Yeah.
With just kind of fluid direction the entire time. So we knew pretty early on that there was definitely something along those lines. We didn't have the formal discussion surrounding diagnosed versus undiagnosed for a while, mostly because, like, in practice, it didn't have that much of an effect on our day-to-day. We kind of knew how all of our neurons were firing by just, like, witnessing one another. So the actual process of being like, did a doctor tell you that you have this? I mean, it kind of came up very casually. Like, oh yeah, by the way, did you know that I was actually diagnosed with ADHD? It's like, oh, interesting. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so do you want to share about when and who had that diagnosis? How old you were and stuff?
Yeah, I can talk about it. So I was the one who's been diagnosed with ADHD. I was diagnosed when I was about, if I'm remembering it correctly, it was 10 years old. I think it was the thing that um, I was told was folks with ADHD make really, really good cavemen. This is the thing that stuck with me. This is the only thing I remember from the actual like diagnosis that happened, which was in a world where there's not a lot of outside stimulus and things, and you could just like do your one thing. You thrive, absolutely. But when there's 100 different things going on around you, and you live in a world where there's constantly new pieces of information to be picking up or things to like kind of put you on new paths, it can be really, really hard to consistently be able to focus at a task on hand. And I liked that comparison. That's why it has stuck with me. But my history with the proper diagnosis was I got it, was medicated on something. I could not tell you what it was statistically at the time because it was, I'm going to tell you exactly how old I am with this, I realized. It was 2005, and that was in a period where it was just like, your child isn't paying attention in class, let's give them Ritalin, I think was about that time. So my mom, I think, statistically had me on that for a day. Got worried when I didn't eat my entire lunch, and then immediately took me off it, and replaced it with, don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. And it wasn't until I was an adult where I like fully acknowledged, I'm like, oh, I did have a diagnosis for this, and it does actually affect my life. Um, so even in the last couple of years has been when it's like kind of properly addressing it. Well, addressing it a bit more, I should say.
And what does that look like? Have you explored the medication route again, or is
I've looked into it. I ran into some barriers of the system, is what I'll say. I was just having trouble navigating the psychiatrist field in New York City. Had a full appointment to meet with somebody, and then read reviews and realized it was a total bait and switch company, and I would have been out a lot of money for probably not being able to get prescriptions filled. So I bailed on that. And Emma can attest to this. My like big hurdle is make an appointment with a doctor of any kind.
Yeah. It usually becomes my job to end up researching people, and I'll just like anytime I know he needs to see a kind of doctor, I'm just sending links all day being like, oh, this person looks good, this person looks good, I called this one and asked about their sort of care.
It's like, they take your insurance, go for it.
Yeah, it's not that it has to be my job, it's just like I am so, I can get really focused on a research project well. So if I'm like, oh, Alden needs to see a doctor, I'll spend my entire day finding him a doctor. Like,
so Emma, what does it look like for you?
yeah, so I'm undiagnosed. It's one of those things where like anyone who knows anything about ADHD and like the autism spectrum meets me and is like, yeah, like probably you have like everyone in my family is somewhere on somewhere kind of spectrum, some kind of spectrum, but none of us have really seen a doctor about it. And not in a way where I think it's debilitating, but just that real recognizes real. We've kind of all figured out our systems in my family. A big thing with me is I do remember a couple years ago I asked my parents, as they were telling me stories about when I was a kid, and I was like, why didn't you take me to a doctor for that behavior? So like I never crawled as a child. My cross lateral movement is very bad. If I try crawling as an adult, it looks very silly, and I'm in so much pain the next day because those muscles just never developed. Not for lack of trying, but I sat, and then when I figured out how to stand, I stood and I walked around. And until then, I would scoot around on the floor making like little trumpet looking stims, just like you know, and my mom was like, oh, that's so cute. I'm like, that, something was happening there. I've also been just like very physically stimmy my entire life. Still now as an adult, I don't think I needed to mask my physical stims very much. Like, I mean, I'm going in very many directions, but so what it looks like for me is just doing a lot of researching now as an adult and testing out, like, oh, you know, here are some ways that other people have like helped their symptoms with these things. I'm going to try those for myself, and they work. And so I just kind of keep, you know, creating these systems for myself that I know work with ADHD and autism diagnoses, and finding how I can work with them too. So knowing that, like, oh, it's not that I'm crabby, it's that I'm overstimulated and probably need to have like some shutdown time, or, you know, the way I'm feeling right now probably means that I am feeling nonverbal. Like, here are some other communication strategies that I can take right now, and so on and so forth. So it's, yeah, never been medicated, or medicated for ADHD, never been diagnosed, but understanding that it's most likely what's happening. Oh, I should say a big part of the story of why I never was taken for a diagnosis. Sorry, I forgot this part. When I asked my mom about it, she said, she said, if I took you to a doctor, they were just going to put you on medication. And she is someone who very much believes in, you know, she believes in medication. She's not anti-research, anti-doctor, but has a very acute understanding of how the profit system of the medical world in the US works, and was worried that help wouldn't actually be given to me, and that it would just be kind of bandaged with something I would become addicted to, because addiction runs very, very easily in my family. We have had opioid issues in the past, and such, like, to the point where when I had oral surgery, my family was like, "Oh no, we're not letting you take painkillers for that. Like, you get Advil," which was awful, and I wish we hadn't done the caution. Yeah, so that's my story. Sorry.
Yeah. So what there's so many things I've heard in what you guys have just said. Both of you have mentioned that it was very much your mum's decision, your mother's decision about medicating you as children. So do you want to share a bit about your father's role in your lives, and what you have seen or noticed in your birth families with your parents? I mean, you both kind of alluded it to a little bit.
Yeah. Um, so on my side, my dad was not as much in that part of the decision making process surrounding us. My mom was a full time mom. While my dad was working those days. My dad's an awesome man. I've got a great relationship with him. He rocks. Um, so I don't want that to be what's taken from here. But a lot of those decisions primarily went through my mom, especially because my dad was kind of sick at the time. He was in and out of the hospital a lot. Um, so, yeah, I mean, when it comes to family history surrounding ADHD, there's no other diagnosis in my family. I think maybe my younger brother, but I don't. Honestly, I'm not sure what his final diagnosis was. I was not paying attention that closely, to be very honest. Um, my mom, if I don't like to be, as I'm not a doctor, I do not like to diagnose people. But what I will say is, if my mom were to get a diagnosis for ADHD now as an adult, I would be so unbelievably unsurprised. Um, I look at my ability to like have to 100 projects and jump between them constantly until I find a thing that I get sucked into. Even though I'll still need external stimulus from that thing I'm being sucked into. And then I'll watch my mom do exactly that and go, "Oh yeah, there it is. Yep, yep. That's where I get that. Cool. Thanks, mom. Appreciate it." Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of my dad, I mean, I guess because my parents are very like joint decision making. I think it's just more so my mom who I ask more questions to.
Hmm.
Um, I'm trying to think because like I don't know, my dad's just
Your dad's just like a quieter guy.
my dad's just like a quieter guy. He's someone that, you know, the advice I ask from him is very different than the advice I ask from my mom. Not because I think they're smarter in different directions. I just, the conversations feel easier to have. So, like, you know, I ask my dad for like financial advice a lot of the time because he works at a bank and, you know, he's really good with numbers and like life planning. Whereas, and I think it comes partially from where my parents' like specialties lie. My dad was getting his master's in mathematics when he met my mom, and now he's a data analyst. And my mom has a PhD in cultural studies and like art and design. Um, and so, you know, like the philosophical existential always goes to her because she'll tell me something to read. Whereas my dad, when I go to my philosophical existential, it's not that he's bad with it, but he's always like, "You're gonna be fine," you know, which is good and helpful when I need that kind of answer. But sometimes I need someone who will tell me it's bad. This will comfort you, sort of thing. So it's not so it's yeah, it's not that he wasn't involved. It's just my mom was more the spokesperson for me, wondering about myself, I guess.
Yeah.
Whereas my dad has great stories of me being cute and silly, which I love as well.
Yeah, and it is. I should clarify on my side too.
Yeah.
Very similar dynamics because my dad's like a CPA, does taxes and has an accounting degree. My mom's a freelance painter, so very similar
Yeah.
sides of the brain, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and also, same with the case of your mom. If my mom were to get an adult diagnosis, everyone would be like,
Yep.
"Yeah, that makes sense." No, she's especially like she, like me, is very physically minded. There was, I mean, this I guess this is a little bit of a stereotype, but there was one year where she gifted all of us these little like magnet stim toys, and she was so excited about them, and like kept asking to play with all of ours. She got one for herself, but she also wanted to like play with all of the magnets that we had because all of them were slightly different, and so she just needed to know how they all worked. And I remember it was Christmas, and I just like a couple hours later saw her in her chair, just like playing with it, just so intently staring. I was like, "Are you having fun?" And she's like, "Oh, so much."
So you've both got siblings, don't you? And you, Alden, you mentioned briefly that you thought possibly one of your brothers may have some sort of neurodivergent mind, maybe. Emma, what about your side with your birth
Yeah,
family?
so I have a little sister. Yeah, she's also undiagnosed, but definitely somewhere in the vicinity, like where I am. I guess I don't really know what to say on the subject. Just that we're very similar. It's something that we talk about on occasion. She's a lot more private about things than I am, so it's a lot of time it's me being like, "Hey, do you ever feel like this?" And she'll be like, "Sometimes." Kind of thing. It doesn't really go. I'll dive into everything that I'm going on with, and she's like, "Yeah." Not that she's, you know, I think I'm making her sound a little crabby with it. She's just she's short with the personal. She's a little bit more reserved, but definitely, you know, someone who is someone who I guess would be considered like a highly sensitive person. Has always, not in a way where she needs like a lot of support, because she's found out how she can take herself out of situations that she's feeling very sensitive to, but just that, you know, we always were aware as a kid that she um the trigger is a lot easier for her to have a meltdown with than like me, for example, who can will withstand a lot, and then when I'm done I am so unbelievably done, sort of thing. Um, does that answer your question well?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
no answering questions well.
Yeah,
It's just whatever
but
you want to share. I mean, it's your stories, and I'm sure that there will people that will resonate a lot with. I know there's so much, when we came out of lockdown, a lot of people realized for themselves that there was stuff going on for them, there's been a lot in the press, but like just I think we've all always been around, haven't we? So like just sharing and reflecting back, and like you've both said about your own mothers, being able to recognize some of yourself, and you kind of the now you understand it's neurodivergent behaviors. It's not just personality. There's the reason that people behave like why we behave the way we do. It's just the way our brains work. And like you said, Emma, finding ways that support you. You're not seeking out medical support. You are, what I've heard is like you feel super empowered to access the information that's available to support your emotional needs. So kind of like coming back to you two as the lovely couple in Brooklyn that I know. So you're, having an understanding of that. Emma, you said such a lovely thing when we've sort of chatted before about, when you enter entered into the relationship, you're kind of, I'm going to have to say it because it was just so beautiful,
Oh,
and I don't want to try and hint at it, but like you said, when you met Alden, it was like you want to know and be known, but that curiosity about him was like that was the top of like getting to know him. And I thought that was so beautiful, to know him and understand him and to be known and to be fully yourself. Do you want to share a bit more about that? Because I was so blown away
yeah.
when you said that.
No, it's just it was something that I think I've clicked in this relationship more so than other ones that I've been in, is just, yeah, understanding that like love isn't just that you feel loved all the time, because I don't think, it's really easy to put a word on what does being loved feel like, I guess. But to understand that loving and being loved is very much a, like, a sort of communication and understanding. Yeah, I mean, of knowing and wanting to be known, and in a way where it's not because you're trying to impress someone, but because you genuinely want to know what's at the core. I mean, I tell this to Alden all the time. Like, I think I've had a number of moments this past week where I've just like sat there and like got teary eyed. I'm like, I am so loved, because he'll do something silly like know that I wanted a certain seasoning on the food that he just made without me having to say it, because he just knows me that well, or is constantly able to like finish my jokes even though I make stupid punchlines that aren't references to anything. He just knows what that trajectory of thought is. And also just being able to recognize each other's behaviors really well, and like knowing each other on that level of, we can see in each other when it's time to go home, when we're at a function, even when we're trying to mask it really well. He's a lot better at masking it than I am. I will fully like go into a slump and people are like, are you okay? I'm like, I'm absolutely fine. And I'm not fine. But I mean, even this past weekend, I'm very, very sensitive to heat. That's something I know about myself. I am prone to heat stroke. I've had it many times. And we had been in the sun all day on like a 90-degree day. So
Yeah.
like 40 degrees Celsius?
It was like 37.
Okay, 30 degrees Celsius. But
hot.
Hot, very hot.
It felt like 40.
Yeah, in the sun, 12 hours. And we were at this bar, and we, ran into friends who we hadn't seen in a while. So we, were talking to them and wanting to catch up, and I am very quickly slipping in this situation. And Alden turns to me and he's like, you're ready to go home. Like, we need to get you out of here, actually. And I'm like, no, because I had been really trying to prolong my ability to stay because we hadn't seen these people in a while. But he was like, no, I know that, like, you need to be laying down. Like, you're not sick, but, like, you're, and I
You'd
felt...
be home in our air-conditioned apartment.
Yeah, and, like, I felt horrible, because I really wanted to be able to catch up with these people, but we're in the car on the way home, and all of a sudden I'm coming back to life because the car is very cold. And suddenly feeling much better and realizing, yeah, I was about to pass out maybe, and I, didn't want to believe that for myself. But I guess it just comes down to like really wanting to invest understanding in the other because you just care to. There's no benefit other than knowing or hoping that the other person's doing the same for you.
Yeah.
And
if I can build on that.
Yeah, please do.
There's an element of it feeling, effortless in a way.
Oh, absolutely.
Because on the other side, it feels like there's this monumental, like, crazy amount of like effort and focus and like meticulous. Like I'm trying to figure out exactly what makes you like what's going on in your head, and I'm going to like just circumnavigate that and fix the problem before there's a problem. But in reality, it's just easy. It's just you recognize something and you're like, this is what needs to be done. You just do it. From just spending so much time together and active listening and actively investing in wanting to be the best for one another, it kind of just comes effortlessly. Like it was not like a huge push for me to see you definitely shutting down at the bar, having subtly mentioned it a couple times as well, being like, why would I make you stay here? That's awful. I'm taking you home where you will be happier. Like that was a no-brainer for me. That's easy. Or like we've made the same style of chicken over rice dish, and every single time I've seen you put, the rice seasoning on it. So I'm gonna put the rice seasoning on for it.
So I don't have to.
Yeah. But it's vice versa. Like for me, it feels like there's this giant lift every time you watch me have, like choice paralysis or overwhelmed having to make a big decision. Where you'll just like you'll do the research and send me the exact things I need to see. And I know for you that's not a heavy lift.
Yeah. I truly feel blessed to live in the era of the internet. I think there are a lot of mistakes that are being made with it, but like as someone who loves information, oh my god, I can find everything. I love to research. I love it so much. I can do it all day.
Yeah, and recognizing each other's energies entirely and being willing to push ourselves, to match the other's energy even when they can end up on polar opposite days.
And we've had some polar opposite days. I'm very much the kind of person who like I wake up and I could run a mile. Like I have so much energy, and
I think it's more about recharging.
Recharging. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Don't be sorry.
Yes.
So where like the way I'm thinking about it is when we have a day eventually where we don't have anything on the calendar. Usually that is preceded by a few weeks of just full court press, like super busy, nonstop action.
Mm-hmm.
And I recharge by having a rotten bed day where I'm just like, I would like to make coffee and breakfast and order in all my other meals and lay in bed and watch an entire season of a show. And then like take melatonin and go to bed at like 8 p.m. That is how I will recharge and feel awesome for the next month and a half, and then I can burn myself out again. Emma is more active rest.
Yeah.
Where resting is...
Well, resting for me, so my shutdown, I call it cave mode, where basically I just need to be in the dark doing nothing. But I only need that for like 2 hours. It takes me it's like really quick for me to recharge. And I'm very much someone who like loves having people around me, and so once I've had my alone time, I'm like, all right, my brain is working again. Who's going to be an audience to this?
That's a great way of putting it.
It's the best way I can, because it's not that I'm performing, but I just like I very much. I feel like my existence in the world is very dependent on being able to bounce off of people. Especially in the way, like, I was joking a lot yesterday because I have a friend in town who I haven't seen in 6 years. And I was constantly saying to her, like, oh yeah, everyone I've ever met is my best friend, like, until they give me a reason not to like them. But, like, if you know me, like, we're close. Because I don't understand boundaries of knowing people, sort of thing. And so, yeah, like, with recharging, I mean, we've figured out, because it used to make me grumpy that he wouldn't want to do anything, and
It would make me grumpy that you would try to pull me out of my rotting bed.
Yes. And so, learning, all right, Alden needs his cave mode. I'm going to go to the park and just, like, run around like a dog. But, I'm going to go get coffee. I'm going to go get a little snack. Like, maybe I need a drink. Like, I'm going to go do things. Maybe I'll see if someone's free, and I'll just show up at someone's house and see if they're around, kind of thing. And then, like, use my restful, restless energy to. It's like my rest is I need to entertain myself, I guess, and entertaining is very interact. Yeah, entertainment for me is usually very interactive. Like, I can watch a show, but even, my mom will sometimes say, oh, I really wish I didn't, I hope I didn't make you watch too much, or not make you, I hope I didn't let you watch too much TV as a kid, because we all know how screens affect us now. And I'll be like, I could never sit and watch TV all day. Like, I would watch 2 or 3 episodes of something, and then I get bored. Like, I want to go do something else. I'd go find a way to draw. I'd go do something outside. I'd start texting people. I think the hardest screen I have is my phone, because it feels so interactive and social. Like, I can use it to talk to people all the time.
And you do.
And I do. I love to talk to people. So, yeah, so figuring out.
Yeah, we realized to recognize that and realize when we can give each other those moments versus be annoyed that the other person, needs those.
And it sounds like if we, like, when we go back to when you guys first met, that kind of neurospicy antenna, knowing and
Yes.
understanding and having that mutual understanding of each other, what each other needs, knowing there's a bit of neurodivergence, which is like sometimes like we forget that there's our character on top of that as well, but supporting how our brains work almost seems to give us the space to really be ourselves. Whereas if we don't give the space for our brains to flatline or get stimulated after a 2-hour rest, that affects our emotional well-being, which affects our character. Whereas if we're giving space to ourselves to flatline or be stimulated in how we want to, we can be who we are,
Mm-hmm.
is what I'm hearing. And certainly
Absolutely.
it's so relatable. It's so relatable. Just kind of like one of my sisters has said forever, just be kind to yourself. And that's hugely relatable. Hugely relatable. And that's what I'm hearing with you guys. It's so lovely. You guys are just being,
Yeah.
it's just about being kind and understanding and curious about each other. And it's so lovely to know you. Really lovely. You're really inspiring as a couple. And
Thank you.
it would be really great maybe to jump on because you've got all sorts of plans coming up and adventures, and you're early on in your relationship, 3 years in,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
and there's
Still going
plenty of
strong.
life to come, plenty of
Oh yeah.
life to come, lots of adventures ahead, I know. So as we kind of bring our kind of time to a close, you've shared so much about your relationship and being so open. How would you like to encourage somebody, often, like, with being neurodivergent, maybe undiagnosed, there's a lot of frustration when you're in relationships. I mean, Emma, briefly, you touched on addictions within the family. There can be a lot of challenges around being neurodivergent, but you've shared a lot that hopefully serves as an encouragement. What would you like to say to somebody who's had a series of failed relationships, but there's still that desire within them to be known. What would you guys like to say to maybe somebody like that?
I would love to start this one off.
Please.
What I want to say is I know that a lot of us tend to be people pleasers. It's something that is, a huge facet, especially of the like born female experience of having neurodivergence. And understanding that when you enter into a relationship, it's not just for the other person, and it's also not just for you. It's not just that it's a balance, but it's, you should want to be there just as much as the other person, and that doesn't require you to meet all of their needs or them to meet all of your needs. Like there are times where, I check in with Aldon because I'll have days where he cooked for me, he made me coffee, I'll be rotting on the couch and I'm like, can you give me water? Like he's doing everything for me, and I'll have to be like, is this okay that you are doing everything in this way? Do you need me to pick up some slack somewhere? And he'll tell me, either, yes, it would be great if you did this, or I got it right now. Next time you do, you can help out with this thing. And then vice versa. I'll have days where I did everything for you, and you feel the need to then start picking up in some way, and I'm like, sit down. And it's not just like acts of service as a love language, but knowing that, being in a relationship is both easy and very difficult, and knowing, you should feel that you are an active participant in it, that you're not just there because you want someone else to feel good, but that the other person is just as invested and engaged with you and your well-being. It's a mutual taking care of each other, as well as an interest in each other too. I think I've seen a lot of my friends, who have ADHD really fall into these pits where they're like, I feel like I'm exhausting myself giving everything to this person, and they don't even know like when I need a day off with it. And I just say, like, does that make you feel good? Because it's not that relationships always feel good, but like, there should be strategies for when you don't feel good. Like I wouldn't say it's a tradition because we don't often have conflict, but when we do have conflict, we have a way of like, here's our neutral space where we're going to talk about it, and we don't fight. We've never really had a fight because we have figured out how to communicate with each other. Because also we don't want to fight.
No.
Not to the point where we avoid conflict, but it's, we're like, okay, we don't have to fight if we talk about it. And that way we never have to experience actual, like, because we're both also very conflict averse. So neither of us is looking to do that sort of thing. And, there's no way that you can avoid conflict completely in relationships, but thinking that if you're upset, you're not able to say anything or communicate it, you're just serving the other person with that, and you're not going to be a part of your relationship. So that's, I guess, what I would say is, don't enter a relationship because you want someone else to feel good. You have to be there too. It's very important that you're there too.
Aldon, would you like to add to that?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is willingness to be open with one another and to hyper communicate. That's not only just communicating every thought that's in your head, but also communicating when the boundaries of that's a little bit too much is, in a way that's not harmful. That's not like, Emma, stop talking.
Yeah.
Because that's not helpful or good. But also, it doesn't set a clear boundary of like, why is this a problem right now? But instead, you share everything that is on your mind. And if it's at a point where it's like, hey, I can't receive this information right now, like passing that back and being like, okay, cool. There's now been a boundary like set up. This is how far I can go right now. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, leading with openness is such a fantastic thing. I think the fact that that was one of the first things I recognized from the very first date. Very, very first, like from like the first couple sentences. I think we told this story last time of our first date, which also perfectly describes both of our neurodivergence instantly. I had spent the entire day of our first date because I was really excited about it. We'd been talking online for a couple weeks, and I was like, "This feels right already." So I was working remotely, and I was, I spent the whole day being like, "Is everything quite right?" Like jumping back between things, and I did like 4 different face masks, and I changed to 3 different outfits before I finally found something I liked. And I sit down, and I'm there like 10 minutes early and waiting. Emma runs in about 15 minutes late, sweaty, going like, I just finished running a chair across Brooklyn for an art exhibition I'm doing for a gallery.
I was in a grad program at the time for curating, so I was moving art. And he knew all about how anxious I was about this exhibition that I was doing.
Yeah. You were just like, sit down. It's like I ran this chair across town, and then I met with my friend here. My friend actually lives right around the corner, and so I was able to get the chair over there. And then by the time I was actually there, I could now come here. Sorry, I'm so late. I'm like,
I hadn't showered in maybe 2 days. I was disgusting. I was absolutely disgusting in my jeans and t-shirt and a hat to like cover my hair, which was caked in grease. I probably smelled bad.
I didn't notice.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I smelled bad.
But
I ran there. I ran like a mile to get there too.
But it was the thing that kind of started off our like being very open with how each other are, because I expressed how my entire day was that morning and being like, did you like this outfit? Like I chose between this one or this one or this one. And, I've been thinking about, like, prepping for this since, like, 2 p.m. today.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, you look great, actually. Like, you look so nice. Like, I felt, oh, my God, I felt so terrible with how prepared you were for this date.
But, 3.5 years later, it's like both of those are just how we roll.
Yeah.
And we recognize that in one another, like, pretty much to a T at this point. And that's because we've, not tried to hide any element of ourselves, really.
It's the reason that I know that if I invite a friend over, I tell him in the after. I never last minute invite a friend over because I know he wants to clean the apartment.
I will be mortified
first. So like, I always, if I'm like, oh, it'd be really fun if this person, came over tonight, I okay it with him. Not because I want you to have veto power, but because I'm like, hey, are you in a space where someone can be in our space today? And usually the answer is yes. I'm going to clean the apartment. And I'm like, you don't have to do that. And he's like,
yes, I do.
I have to clean the apartment.
I actually have to do that, so I'm going to do that now.
Yeah. And so also knowing that, like, when my family was staying here when we were both not staying in the apartment at the time, I was cat sitting, you were out of town. I told my parents, Alden's coming home tonight. Please pick up the apartment so that there's a clean apartment for him to come home to. And, and you cleaned the whole apartment before my family stayed here. Exactly. Like, we're not an Airbnb.
I know, but
it's important.
What will they think of me if there's trash in the trash?
They'll think that you live here.
But I think another big thing regarding communication is that kind of like that desire to be entirely known. I think the idea of having that come from just the person who's in your relationship puts a lot of pressure both on you and to that other person. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, because there are certain things that, like, I don't really want to talk about with Emma as much, and that, or that I don't want to necessarily have talked about to me from Emma. And that's, I think, a totally normal thing and okay to, like, set up those kind of guardrails there and not need to necessarily get every kind of communication and thought heard and understood by just one person.
Yeah.
I mean, I won't speak for both of us, but I'm in therapy as well. On top of that, I have a handful of friends who I know that I can speak to about a handful of things that I know Emma does not care about more so than anything. It's like look, I follow professional esports, like professional video games, and I have for the past 10, 11 years, and I'm really into it. And I know that I can't just talk to Emma for hours about it because Emma does not care. And that is fine. I would be confused if you cared.
Yeah, but no. I have tried to. It just doesn't. It doesn't.
When there's big story beats that don't involve the game at all, I can tell you that because there's so much drama.
Who dropped out? Who retired? Like.
Absolutely. Or I'll have to prep and be like, I'm going to make this incredibly brief because it's about League of Legends, and then we'll move on from here. Or, sometimes, like, I'm not always in the headspace to talk about, like, political doom.
Oh, I can always political doom. Yeah. I'll come home and I'll be like, so I was reading the news story and I'm convinced we're all going to die. And he's like, no.
I need to, like, focus on the fact that I need to make dinner for us right now.
Yeah, no, that's the thing is, like, I'm very prone to doom scrolling. I think I have a healthier relationship with it now, but oftentimes, as I was saying earlier, I'm someone who processes through other people. So if I'm thinking about something, it's not necessarily that I'm bringing it up because I feel awful about it. I'm bringing it up because I want to know what someone else thinks about it. Like, you know.
Yeah.
But you're not always the person I can do that.
Exactly. So I'm usually like, I'm not thinking about it. I'm actually actively really avoiding it because there's nothing I can do about it right now.
Yeah.
So why am I freaking myself out? So that's all to say, even though we are, as a couple, extremely attached at the hip, like a very, very, very close couple, we do most things together. We still have our networks outside of ourselves, so that we can still have that feeling of being heard and known on things that don't necessarily constantly jive with one another.
Yeah, because, I mean, I to another point of what should people who are, on neurospicy look for in a relationship is knowing that, like, your person doesn't have to be your everything. And in fact, that could be very exhausting for the other person, Consider that even when you're in a relationship, you're still a person, and it's very beautiful and important that you're still a person, even when you're in a relationship. Because, we're a unit, but we have our own things that we need to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Our own goals, aspirations, interests. And you're invited to everything.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to be there, but you don't need to take every invitation I have to give you.
We're okay saying no to each other. No.
That's really special. There's such a sense of safety between you guys and freedom as well to still be you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's really nice.
Yeah, it's great. I'm very happy I met you.
Yeah, ditto.
Thanks, Internet.
Is there any kind of last minute go here, go there that you find helpful around relationships, new relationships, safety that we met? Emma, I'm just thinking, like, when you guys decided to move in, it was really important for you. Like, it felt really great. It felt really anchoring. But you didn't want to just move straight in alone with Aldon. You still wanted that neutral ground before you decided as a couple that you then wanted your own space. There was no rushing and impulsivity in what I'm hearing. There's been something quite gradual building to get you to your own apartment now. Has that kind of consideration always been the way you've approached relationships?
No, actually, and I think that's why those are the choices that I've made in this relationship, is knowing that I love hard. I love very hard and very intensely. And knowing that my intensity is not a downside of the way I love, but understanding that I should make boundaries for myself because it'll make me feel better. And, knowing that instinct and practicality sometimes differ a little bit. And I guess learning from experience and knowing that, because I'm an extremely impulsive and forward person, especially when it comes to people that I'm interested in. And knowing that, not that I need to tone that down, but knowing when it's appropriate. and learning through trial and error when it's appropriate.
We had a whole conversation about this really early on in the relationship. Like date 4.
We were like...
Because I'm the same way. I always have been. This relationship has been a learning opportunity in that regard, where, previous relationships I had been really burned on that, where like I'm like, if I'm dating somebody and I'm like in my early school, I'm like, if I'm dating somebody, I expect this to be end game and we are going to get married.
Yep, and I'm the same.
And I'm thinking about that 4 months in.
I talked about us getting married maybe 3 months into our relationship, which you were like, I don't think I'm ready for that conversation. I was like, okay.
So we had to have a sit-down talk. This was before that.
Yes.
Where we were both like, hi, I tend to jump into things really quickly when I get really excited. And I am excited about this, about you. And I want to make sure that we have a quick chat to talk about what we want, what we're looking for, our expectations, maybe talk a little bit about our history to have an understanding of where we're coming from, and see how we can kind of find a course for us to follow and see if we agree on said course.
Yeah, and I think another important part of that conversation we had was also telling each other, like, what are our relationship triggers? And I think that's a lot of why we know each other and understand each other so well now is, in talking about history, we would be like, here is an action that I now recognize as something that doesn't feel good to me. So if this sort of thing is occurring, I would really like for us to talk about it.
Yeah.
And sometimes even little things where I'm like, I hate the word
noise. Yeah.
Because, which is, I don't know if that's really as much of a thing in the UK, but like here, people, it's just kind of like noise.
A fun way of saying nice.
Yeah, but
okay.
For me, I dated someone who that implied that they weren't listening to what I was saying, and so I very quickly was like, please don't noise me. Like, I hate it so much. And he's never said it again.
Yeah.
I think you said it once, and I immediately was like, please don't.
I've never typed it, but I've definitely said it because it's a popular little thing to say here.
Yeah.
Blame, I think, Andy Samberg for that one. I'm going to blame him.
Yeah, you can blame him for everything.
Yeah.
So who brought up the conversation? How?
I think it was you.
It was me.
And when you brought it up, did you prepare in your mind that I need to have this conversation with Emma and prepare her for the conversation? Or did you prep in your mind and then just go, Emma, I'd really like to...
I'm trying to remember back. Feels like a million years ago, but I think I gave you a heads up that I'm like, I would like to have like a kind of like a serious talk today about the relationship and like where it's headed.
Mm.
I didn't have a lot of specific things in mind, but I had like a lot of like things that I wanted to talk about my past with, and a little bit of where I want this to go. Mm. And I think I expressed that. I was just like, talk about our relationship, what we want from this, and just things to know. I think I gave you that heads up earlier in the day.
Yeah, you texted me, and then and then you came over that night, and we were hanging out, and I remember this actually very well. I was like sitting and playing video games. I think I was playing Hades, which I was obsessed with at the time.
Yes.
I have a pretty good runtime on it. But I was just like sitting and playing Hades, completely just like checked out, and you were like, "Hey Emma, I'd really love to have that conversation that I texted you about." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, 1 second, let me just finish this real quick." And I like wrapped it up in like 5 minutes. Humble brag. And we then, just like, I think I was
sat on your bed and just
talked it out.
Yeah.
And it was like very, very awkward at first, but I think I don't see a world in which that kind of conversation is not awkward. But I guess to another point of like, for anyone looking in relationships, knowing that like awkward isn't bad. You're just trying to figure out what is needed, and like awkwardness can only be alleviated by continuing to communicate, because we were very fluid with talking about our emotions after that, and like we're able to be vulnerable with each other so much easier after we broke through the like so here's how I really like you. You know,
within that, because that was very much the two of you. And when you meet somebody new, you already have your tribe around you, your people, and then you've got this new person. How much influence was each of your people on each of you when you met, or was it very, or was this relationship something that was just for each of you? Was there outside influence of your
I was
support
gonna,
network?
I would say there was some. I wouldn't say like influence feels a little bit strong, but I would say that there was definitely outside forces either nudging along, getting us ingrained into one another's community, or people vibe checking. We are both folks of our communities. As Emma said, everybody is Emma's best friend. I'm a little bit different, but I keep a small circle, but I trust that small circle with my life. And really early on, I'll tell my side of it.
Yeah.
We'd been dating, 3 weeks. I think we had gone on a date, maybe 2 dates. And I was talking to my friend Ben, who's joining us on the Sweden hike, about Emma. I mean, like, this person's so cool and so funny. Holy shit. Oh, sorry. Ignore that I said that. You can bleep it out. But it was just like, great. Invite them in. Bring them into the Discord. We were in a Discord group, just like a audio call together where we'd play video games and play online games and chit chat with each other during the pandemic. It's like, bring Emma in. I'm like, I don't know, y'all. We are a lot, and we have a very specific sense of humor.
It was also Valentine's Day.
And our friend was like, no, invite Emma into the Discord. Like, I'm not asking, I'm telling you to do that. And I was like, all right, cool. Well, here goes nothing. And I added Emma in. I'm like, great. Meet my entire close friend group all at once online right now.
And I was like, hi. I was very bombastic.
Yeah, I mean, you fit in right away.
Yeah, instantly started making jokes.
Like, everybody thought you were hysterical. I think it was Ben who said, Aldon, why didn't you tell me that they are funnier than you? So yeah, that was like my definite, like, okay, this is going to work out. Like, it's a good sign for me when a partner gets on with all of my people, because my people are people that I trust, and when there's like no real conflict between a partner and those people, I'm like, I feel good, I feel safe, I don't have to like do double masks on either side to be like, I'm with my buddies, I'm with Emma, I'm with my buddies. Instead, it's like, we're all buddies and we're hanging out together.
I mean, all of your friends are my friends now. Like,
exactly.
I've adopted your entire friend group.
You've taken all of them. I've taken some of yours.
You also have taken some. Yeah, no, like it's very much like our communities kind of meshed really quickly. To answer the question too, there was a little like I'm someone who I need to tell my parents everything. Which is very funny because I used to fight with them all the time, but now I'm like, they are my diary. I'll just call them with whatever thought I have. And so I definitely like my vibe check is truly like, if my parents like you, you're good. Because my parents are very good at telling me when they don't like who I'm dating. Has been a source of conflict, but also like in the past, not with him. But like they were always right. They were always right. So it's like them, but also like I take the opinions of those around me very, very seriously. I'm not one to fight someone back if they tell me that they don't like something about someone I'm seeing. And so like I tried to get you to meet as many of my friends as possible it was also 2021, so like not as many people could be met. But I think I brought you into one of my Discords too.
You did, yeah.
Yeah, because everything was online at the time, so I brought you into one of my Discords, and yeah, my friends similarly were like, he's wonderful, like we love him, and it's very silly. Especially in the early part of our relationship, everyone thought we had known each other for way longer than we actually did. I mean, Ben like asked me.
Ben was like, when are you proposing? I'm like, Ben, we've been dating for 9 months.
It's like we don't know each other that well yet.
That was years at this point.
Yeah. No, and I think that's another thing, was like we felt good enough about each other that we introduced each other to families and friends very quickly.
Instantly, yeah.
Because we did the vibe check of, I think you work in my community, and then our community did the vibe check of like, yeah, that person's been here the whole time, sort of thing.
And we are very much so people of our community, so it only makes sense.
Yeah. And it's just, yeah, so I don't know if it's so much influence pushing us towards each other rather than influence confirming that this was the right person to bring into our lives.
You guys are so lovely. I love hanging out with you.
I think you're frozen.
Oh, it's okay. It's just trying to reconnect. It's reconnected.
Okay.
You're back.
Cool.
Hello.
I'm back. Riverside can do all of its magic at some point. So, gosh, there's so many other things, but I know you guys have a special showing that you guys are wanting to get to.
Yes, we're very excited.
We're going to a brunch screening of Weird Al's UHF.
Weird Al Yankovic?
Yes. It's his movie from the 90s, from 99, I think. No, we were looking at The Mummy, which they're doing a restoration of too. I think it was from early 90s, because he still had the big perm hair. Yeah, they did a digital restoration brunch showing of UHF, and we're really excited.
We're gonna walk there. It's great.
But sorry, continue.
No. So I think you've given such helpful advice for people. You guys have kind of arrived at your relationship kind of fairly young, but really you've already done quite a bit of learning of yourselves and wanting to take that learning into the relationship, and that there's a sense of safety that you guys seem to have established quite early on, and you have that kind of kindness and consideration of each other that just keeps growing. And like you said, it's not, even as kind of a young couple fairly new into a relationship, it isn't even just about you guys. It's about your birth families, the communities that you're both in. None of us operate in isolation, and just how that kind of impacts on your kind of couple world. Like, when none of us are an island. No relationship is just one thing in its own. And I could hear that it was important. I mean, you guys have shared how thoughtful it is, how important it is, to be known and be known, but also how to have your people, to have your oneness in yourself, and things that are important for you, that you don't have any expectation of the other person to be as important, is also really special. And that it is all possible to kind of have this kind of relationship and this communication and this dialogue, and to be hopeful of it, really, no matter what your age, I would say.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was such a fun discussion to have. Like, anytime we can kind of gush about each other, we jump on the opportunity.
That's lovely. And I really, for anyone listening, so for you who's listening, there's always hope. There's always, Emma's talked about that impulsivity and then learning from it, and Aldon, you've referenced it as well. Just like your past does not have to shape your future relationships. Just learn where it's been negative, because there could be something really beautiful for you. So thank you so much, Aldon and Emma. So you've been listening to Even the Dog Has ADHD, because apples never fall far from trees, and it's never just one.